What comes to your mind when you think of the word bookworm, Madiha?
I think it's someone who really enjoys reading books, just like me. For example, on a Friday night, what I look forward to is getting in bed with a good book instead of binge watching and going brain dead on TV shows and movies.
That sounds like a perfect plan, but guess what? I found a little library with the same name. Any guesses where this is located?
In India, abroad.
India.
Okay, India's pretty big, so you'll have to give
Okay,
me another clue.
I'll give you a clue. It's where your sister lives currently, and also.
Goa!
Okay,
Yes,
good job. Excellent.
got that one.
It's a little library called Bookworm, and it's located in Panjim, Goa. Today, we have someone very special from there, Sujata Noronha. She works out of an organization called Bookworm, and that provides resources, facilitates library and reading within the community of Panjim and in schools around the state.
That's so cool. I have another librarian here. She's an experienced teacher as well, and she has come all the way from Singapore. Any guesses? Which city?
Singapore, Madhya.
Okay, that was a bit too obvious. Okay, never mind. That's correct, Dia. And this is Nadine Bailey. She has worked in a PYP library and secondary library at different schools across the globe and has been living around the world. She has acquired quite a few languages, and her big passion is bi or multilingualism and culturalism, which she has tried to incorporate in her work, learning, and essays.
Wow, we have two librarians from across two countries with lots of ideas, just so perfect to fit in our NLF theme. They are here to share their insights on the role of space in regard to books, stories, and conversation.
Okay, so we're not going to waste any more time. Please help us welcome Sujata and Nadine.
Hi, everybody. So, when we got the assignment to talk about getting your child reading role of space, we were like, oh my gosh, do they expect us to be selling bookshelves or cozy chairs or a nice place in your house that you convert into a library? And then we had a little small exchange of email and we met up and we decided, no, that's not what we are about. We're talking about making a space in your lives to read. And now, I'm so sorry, we had a whole bunch of students there, and I wanted to do a little poll to find out amongst our audience how many of you have spent more than an hour on the internet in the last week? Back to back. Okay. And yeah. How many of you have watched more than one Netflix or TV program back to back? Okay. And how many of you have spent more than an hour reading? Listening or reading, yeah, listening to an audiobook. Okay, I'm so happy to see that. Because one of the most important things, I think, is to make that time in our lives for reading. And often it's so easy to spend that time on the internet. We watch the one TV program after the other, but we often say, oh, I don't have time to read. And if we don't have time to read, and if we're not showing our children that we're making time in our lives to read, then it's really, really hard for them to think that we really value that. And they pick up cues very quickly from us. So whenever a parent comes to me and says, get my child to read, or my child's not reading, I first want to know a little bit about their reading lives, right? Children are smart.
Thank you. So I don't know if my poll will work, but how many of you have recently spoken to your children about what you are reading? Nice. I just feel we're in the right tent.
What are you doing here?
Yeah, I mean, or we have the wrong audience. But to just articulate this really small point that often as we become adults, we for some reason appropriate this idea that we need to tell children what to do. And reading is so much socially constructed that what you do actually around reading is perhaps the most critical act that will invite your child into a reading. world. So those of you whose hands didn't go up, perhaps tonight's a good night to talk to them about what you're reading. It doesn't necessarily have to be a novel, but just what you've been reading. So you enter into a reader's relationship with your child. So the idea that you are a reader is really perhaps a very critical thing that will stimulate your child to imagine the possibility of growing as a reader. We wondered if any of you would have any questions at this point or want to say something, because Nadine and I really want this to be interactive. About the two ideas, about time and interaction, anyone?
My daughter, she's sitting here next to me. I'm like happy, like even she can hear what is my question. She loves to select the books. Even like today, she has selected 4 books. But she loves to play a lot than reading. So I don't know what to do, how to bring her, like reading it is more important for you. That is my question. I don't know. It's a nice question.
Let's ask her. Yes. Tell us what you think.
What's your name, darling?
Mary Roshni.
So tell us a little bit about your playing, because you've bought 4 books. Now that's quite big, because I know some children who wouldn't spend their Saturday here, am I right?
Absolutely.
When
Or
they
their money.
Or their money,
their
yeah.
money.
And if they saw books there, they'd be running a mile. They wouldn't be choosing 4 books to be reading. So I think you're ahead of the game, right? Am I right? Okay, so you have an opinion about books, right? Did your mom choose your books for you, or did you choose them?
I choose my books.
Okay, I think that's also vital, that you have
Critical.
an opinion about what you read, and you're not having your mom come to you and say,
decide.
you have to read Enid Blyton, because that's what I read when I was a child.
I'm forcing her.
Oh, you are. So maybe we can be more watchful of that act of imposing our choices, because we do accept on every front that life is different now. But we see in the library, even till today, parents come and want their children to read what they read 25 or 30 years back. But we have to acknowledge that reading is different, interests are different, choice is different. Our children are growing up in a different world, and they must have the space to pick what they want to read. And so selection, we feel, is important. So if you're encouraging, that's so lovely.
Yeah, that I did. But to read.
Right, so you are taking us to the next act. So
next
she's
act.
motivated to buy books, to select books, to own the books, and then you're concerned that she's
Concern
not
is
reading them.
reading, yeah.
Okay, so I have a secret weapon, and that's called my son. Now, my son is probably one of the naughtiest boys around, okay? And he doesn't like reading, right? Okay, he loves playing. He loves playing football. He loves playing with his friends. He loves doing everything except for reading. And that's wonderful, because I'm a librarian, and it keeps me humble, right? Because otherwise I'd be the super person waving this magic wand and getting children to read. It's not that easy, right? Yeah. And I think it's very important that you read to your child. So what did I do while he was this age? He didn't want to read, but he loved cuddling up to me while I was reading to him. He's now 16 years old, and he's this big, and he still cuddles up to either me or my husband, and we read to him, because reading is something that's hard for him. For whatever reason. He's not dyslexic, he's got no problems that way, but maybe he's a little bit lazy. But we tell him how much we value reading by spending our time reading to him and with him, and that's the way we do it. Yeah. And in the evenings, we sit at the table now, and we're living in Beijing, I take the China Daily, and I'll be reading an article. I'll read the article aloud to him, and we'll discuss it. And we're still reading. We're still engaging in reading. We're still engaging in conversations.
Yeah, I have one more. I when she was small, maybe I was like cuddling and I was reading. Now I thought she is post-standard. She has to do it herself.
Oh, everybody
Yes.
still needs to cuddle and read.
So I don't know
Any
if you were
age.
here when this young boy shared about picture books. He said something so important. He said, you know, even as grown up and as adults, we love read aloud. And there's something almost primordial in our interest in the story, and that when a story opens up, it draws us into that story world. And I completely understand as a parent, we're looking at children becoming independent on many things, but I think reading and drawing them into that story world should never be an independent act. As much as you can do together, you'll treasure this time with her, and she'll
you so
treasure.
much.
Yes. So I urge you to read with her as much as possible. I work in the library, and actually children run sometimes when I enter a room, because the next thing is I'll say, come now, I want to read a story. There's like two stories of such a good story. But I've really got intimate with so many children through a story, and my life is so enriched by it. So I urge you to read. Yes, with her.
And not just
joy.
mummy. Where's daddy?
Yeah, daddy is,
Very good point.
yeah, daddy is busy. Yeah.
You can start,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
you can read with daddy.
Maybe
as
I have
well.
done. So now I have to continue, as
Yes.
you're saying.
Keep it up. Keep it
Yeah,
up.
yeah,
Yeah.
And yeah, would I wish that my son was reading on his own? Yeah. But
Yeah.
that's not the reality. It is what it is.
Yes, absolutely. And we were talking about this idea of readiness. See, we sometimes imagine you're ready at a particular age for something. And I think, thankfully, as human beings, we're still such diverse, wonderfully unpredictable species that readiness cannot be a formula. So let's discover each child, and let's be available for the nuances of what that reader needs. In that sense, to go back to Nadine's first point of space, the space in our own minds to accommodate, to be different, to provide for differences, and to not be formulaic. I feel that becomes a hurdle in some ways to our imagination of getting our children reading. Yes.
It should never be an act of aggression, right?
Yeah.
That phrase of get your child to read.
Yeah.
It seems almost like, an assault on our children.
Yeah. Does
Anybody else?
Yeah, question or a comment?
So there are several new ways of delivering the content in books, like kind of like read to me books. There's Audible, and what I see for myself is that those things are a little bit easier in some ways. So do you see these trends prevailing, or is it going to be pretty much, the classical, get in front of a book and read?
Well, India's got such a rich storytelling culture, okay? So what is a book but a way of conveying a story? When people say easier, they're often talking about graphic novels or comics. I challenge you to go and have a look at some of the graphic novels nowadays. They tackle some very, very complicated topics. And to be able to marry the words and the images that are sometimes having two parallel stories going on is a very big art. And as a librarian as well, I choose to get through a huge number of books. I read picture books. I listen to audiobooks all the time. Is that easier? No, actually it's quite hard, because it's harder to listen to an audiobook because your mind gets distracted, right? So I actually find I have to do something like go for a walk or do some exercise while I'm listening to an audiobook, because otherwise I'll get distracted and I'll be like, oh my gosh, what happened now? So it's not easier because you actually really have to concentrate and activate your mind. Reading's reading. Listening to stories, getting what the essence of reading is, which is internalizing other people's worlds and stories. I don't think we should be picky and choosy about, oh, this one's superior to that one, and that format's better than that format.
Yeah, I don't have much to say except I get frightened when people want predictive, I don't know, patterns, because I honestly feel we don't know. But what I think something like Audibles does is give many of our children an opportunity to listen to a story. For some children, I do see it's easier for them to listen than to decode, comprehend, and read independently. And so, yeah, I again leave it to the child and feel as a library, we need to provide access to different ways to get to the story, because the story is central. Yeah.
We have a young gentleman.
How can I make my mommy read to me?
You know what? Does your mummy have a very busy agenda? She's not here.
She never reads to me. She's too busy.
Okay, you know what? You need to get. Does your mummy work?
Yes.
You need to get hold of your mummy's.
In the house.
Okay, you need to put a. Has she got a diary or an agenda?
No.
No, you need to find an agenda and put her time in the agenda and say, I book time with you to read to me.
Okay.
Okay?
Hi, that was lovely. I'm just wondering, we have a home filled with books, and as a result of that, our children have libraries and they have shelves in their own rooms and all over. But not everyone has that luxury. I recognize that. Do you think it's important? What is the relevance of, we live with books, and I see the impact of that on my children. What is the impact of space? I think it's very important, but not everyone has that luxury. What can people do to create that environment that nurtures readers if they don't have the luxury of having all their walls lined with books?
To me, it's you just belong to a library. Go and join a library.
Join the library.
I don't feel every house should have library-like atmospheres, but there should be libraries everywhere.
Yeah, when I moved from Singapore to Beijing, I was only allowed to take 200 books with me. It broke my heart. I gave away about 2,000 books. And now I have very few books in my home. Has it stopped me reading? No. I'm part of the library. I buy books on audio. I keep reading all the time. And I think make time to join a library. I'm not sure what the public library situation's like in India.
That's the challenge, essentially. You don't really have great libraries here. There really isn't much.
We need to create them.
Yeah. Action project.
I'm talking to the right person.
This is an IB school action project for your students.
Because systemically in India, through policy, we have provisioning for public libraries. As citizens, I think we have given up on them. And so I really feel we must compel ourselves to make them live spaces, to enliven them so that more children can have access. Because they do exist as institutions. It's just that we are not active within them and therefore not making demands on those spaces and collection and the,
Yeah, and if every child here at Neev went to whatever you have here in Bangalore and asked for a library card, it would make a difference. It would be a voice. Use your voice.
Yeah, because we all deserve libraries. Yes.
In my home, I have 100 books in my bookshelf and I read them all by myself.
Have you got a teddy bear? Have you got a favorite teddy bear?
Yes.
I think you should read it to your teddy bear.
Yeah.
Can you do that for me?
I have a sister.
Oh. Is she bigger or smaller than you?
Smaller.
Well, then you're going to be reading to her, right?
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Yes, thank you.